السلام عليكم، أهلا وسهلا بالجميع. حياكم الله في لقاء اليوم تحليل التكاليف التشغيلية في القطاع اللوجستي من أجل تعظيم الربحية. ضيفنا المهندس ميغيل كاميرس من البرتغال، متخصص في هذا المجال من أكثر من 25 سنة وخبرة كبيرة في عدة شركات لوجستية منها شركة ميرسك. عمل معهم في تصميم النظام اللوجستي نظام التكاليف اللوجستية. ففي مركز تمهير الرواد حبينا نسمع منه في 30 دقيقة مختصرة عن آلية تحليل التكاليف التشغيلية في هذا القطاع والاستفادة من هذه الأرقام في تعظيم الربحية. لضيق الوقت ربما يكون من الصعب استقبال الأسئلة، لكن هو حيستعرض طرق التواصل الشخصي معه مباشرة في نهاية هذا اللقاء لمن أراد التواصل معه إذا في أي استفسارات. Thank you, Mr. Miguel, for joining us, and hopefully we will have a great time to hear about the operational cost analysis in the logistics sector for profit maximization. I will leave the mic to you, and
thank you.
Yeah, good luck.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Khalid. Allow me to start by thanking you for this invitation, and thank you all the participants for joining us today for this webinar. So let me start by sharing my screen, and I'll deep dive into the topic of the webinar. The topic today will be operational cost analysis for profit maximization in logistics. We will have 30 minutes for that. I know it's a bit short. I will try to speak slowly in my English. I hope everybody can follow. And I will start very briefly by giving you a quick intro on myself. I'm a management industrial engineer, born in Porto from Portugal. I worked many years for Maersk, the biggest shipping company of the world. And since from 2002 to 2010, I've been there implementing the costing model for one of the organizations, DEMCO, the supply chain and logistics provider of Maersk Logistics. I lived in Denmark, I lived in Netherlands during those 8 years. And during that time, I've been working with Professor Kaplan in the projects and implementing the new methodology, time-driven activity-based costing. And the topic today, I will focus specifically on this methodology because the time will be short, but there is more, if we have more time, more opportunities, I'm sure we can review more methodologies. I presented the result of that project in 2010 in Amsterdam, next to Professor Kaplan. In 2010, I decided to start my own consulting company to help more companies over the globe to implement ABC and TDABC, the time-driven activity-based costing methodology. Since 2020, I started a software company also to help small, medium enterprises to implement ABC and TDABC using a solution that it's in the cloud. Okay, but more about that maybe in a future session. For today, the topic, as we mentioned, is about operational cost analysis for profit maximization logistics, and I'll try to bring my experience in one or two examples. Of course, DEMCO and Maersk will be the foundation, but then I will be using also a case study for a company, a distribution company in New Zealand. Basically, you all know this, right? The competitive landscape in logistics is quite, it's being more challenged every day. Knowing the profitability, knowing your operational cost, it's fundamental. So we cannot, companies that want to thrive and grow in a profitable manner over the next years, they will have to know their costs from A to Z. We will focus on time-driven activity-based costing, and I will explain you very briefly what is this methodology all about. Basically, I will summarize in 5 steps. And I will also give you some hints and tips how to implement this methodology in logistics organizations. So if we focus on this methodology specifically, this is a lot of text. Next slides, I will show you step by step how we build this. But basically, the time-driven comes as an improvement from the previous methodology, activity-based costing. Activity-based costing is a methodology that exists since the 80s, also developed by Professor Kaplan and Professor Cooper. And one of his students, Steven Anderson, the guy in the book here, the co-author of the book Time Driven Risk Costing, he explores he challenged Professor Kalpan in some of the, I'll say the difficulties of ABC. And one of the key differences will be the time equations. It will be the data. Of course, most companies today, they will have a lot of data that we can use to make this process more automatic and less demanding from the teams. In the past, ABC models, they were very demanding. You have to always, by the end of the month, you have to almost interview the full team to get the time estimation, the drivers, a lot of the data. So at the moment, sorry, let me just, sorry for a second, there's something going on here next to me. At the moment, we time driven, we try to make this automatic, and we try to not only make it automatic, but bring a lot more data that it's actionable, data that we can then decide where to optimize cost, where to increase profitability, and we can go and meet our customers, our suppliers, and try to optimize the supply chain. So that's the idea on time driven. If I simplify that in 5 key steps, and I'll take you step by step. The first step we do in this type of methodology, we calculate the unit cost, but there's a key difference in the typical unit cost calculation and the one we use for time TDABC. What we are going to do is, of course, we are going to isolate the cost of a specific department. I'm giving you here an example of a department with 28 employees doing some administrative activities, and the cost of that department, including maybe the rent, some of the the salary, some of the other costs, $567,000 for a specific time period. We will divide that cost by what we call the practical capacity of the resources. And what is that? Basically, Professor Kaplan, what he recognizes that even knowing that we pay these costs, we have these costs, these fixed costs, we should take out the time of non-productive from these teams. And what is that? Typically, the time for lunch, for breaks, for training, education. So Kaplan enumerates a few of the things maybe we should take out. By taking that time out, the cost that we get is the cost of practical capacity. Okay, and this is important by 2 reasons. For example, at Maersk, Demco, connecting you with a practical example, we were doing the outsourcing of some of the activities from Europe to Asia. And one of the interesting things of this first calculation was to identify, for example, within China, what was the branch that had a lower cost per minute, considering not only the cost, but also the practical capacity. Okay, so this is just a very simple example of practical utilization of this information. The second step in TDABC, and this is where things start to be interesting from an engineering point of view. So basically my background, I love this type of work, where we have the process maps. A lot of companies, they have invested in Lean, Six Sigma, Kaizen. So a lot of companies have implemented all these methodologies. And what Time Driven does, that it's interesting, it will complement on those process maps. Here, I'm giving you a very simple example of receiving orders. So in this process map, I'll start taking you by the orange, the traditional process to receive an order, and then you'll see that there will be some questions, some yes/no situations where basically we will have to go to sub-process within the order. So first example, I receive an order and I had to print that order. I go to the printer, receive the order, analyze the order, 2 minutes. Okay, it takes me 2 minutes to receive an order. The first thing we will do is to validate if this is it's a customer or an account that it's already created in our system, in our company. And this is where things start to be interesting. So if it's a new customer, then most likely I will have to collect some data, some information, some financial information, some more details of the customer. I will have to submit to the accounting, to IT, to systems, and then eventually I will have that account created so I can continue to fill in the order in my systems. Okay, this sub process of creating a new account takes 5 minutes. In that order, then I'm analyzing all the products they ordered, and there's one specific product that I don't have a quote, so I don't know the price. If that happens, then I need to go to my commercial team and probably identify what is the product. Do I have that product in stock? Yes or no? If no, do I have it in system? If I don't have in system, most likely I will have to contact the vendor. If I already have in system, I can probably present a price to that product. And then I can go back. Okay, then the customer will say yes or no, I want to buy that product. And then finally, that person who will receive the order will fill in the order in the system. And here, what we are going to do also very interesting is we are going to analyze how much time it takes to fill in product by product of this order in the system. And we said 2 minutes per product. Finally, we are going to confirm the order, and the order will go to the next team, let's say to the warehouse team. Okay, so this is an important part of the process in the TDABC. The third step, we are going to collect some information. So we are going to collect what is the key activities, what is the time spent, and what is the driver. So in that orange horizontal line, we had 2 minutes per order, 2 minutes per order line, 1 minute to confirm to the warehouse, 5 minutes to create a new account. So we collect all this information. For what? We collect that information so we can apply what's the differentiator in this time-driven activity-based costing, and that is the time equation. Okay, so this looks a bit complex, but has nothing of complex. It's a very simple mathematical formula that we are going to use to map and to use to calculate the minutes and then the costs of a specific activity. In this case, 2 minutes to receive the order, 2 minutes per line item per product, plus 1 to confirm to warehouse. And then mathematically, we will use these if statements. And if it's either a yes or no. So if it's a new customer, I will add 5 minutes. If it's a quote, I will add more minutes depending on if it's a new, if I have it in stock, if I have to contact the vendor. So basically, we are going to convert the process map into an equation, and then this equation will be reading the data from our systems. Okay, and this is the critical thing about TDBC, and that is also the reason why a lot of companies today, logistics and supply chain, warehousing, distribution, a lot of these companies, they are very rich in terms of data. And if we use the data right, we can apply this TDABC methodology. Okay, if we don't have the data, I have to admit, even Professor Kaplan said there's different levels of maturity. And I think one of the constraints that can say that can be a showstopper to a company to implement TDBC, it's the data. If we don't have the data, of course, it doesn't make sense to ask people to go in and map the time or give me the number of orders, the number of products per order. So this information needs to be available, and if we have that data, then we can use it to implement TDABC. If we have all this in place, one of the interesting things we start seeing in the dashboards, in the management reports, and this of course is a very simple example. I add 3 activities. I can start measuring the time, total time. If I have the cost per minute, I can also, of course, know the costs per activity. And one of the interesting things is the used capacity and unused capacity. So if I have a team of 28, I know how many minutes I have available per month. And then because this is a bottom-up approach, so I have these time equations running on my data, I can know month in, month out, what is my capacity utilization. And in this example, for example, I have 8.2% of unused capacity. Another interesting thing about using TDABC is that while in traditional costing and activity-based costing, we were basically allocating the full costs. Okay, so a very simple example. If I only have one order in a specific month, then the full costs in traditional costing or ABC will be allocated to that order. And we all know that's incorrect. Using TDABC, we are allocating only the costs of the time that was consumed order by order. Okay, so this is very also an interesting. It's a more accurate. It's the most accurate methodology for a cost allocation. Moving into the reports, one of the most interesting reports, and a lot of the board members and the CEOs, CFOs of the companies, they love to see, it's the whale curve. Okay, the whale curve, I will show you in a case studies in a few minutes of a real whale curve of a real customer. But in theory, what we are doing is, if we do the cumulative profits of a customer, so let's say my best customer will represent 40% of my total profit. and then the second 30, and then the third 20. So we do the cumulative profits. What this curve is telling me is that typically the 20% most profitable customers could generate somewhere between 150 to 300% of the profits. Okay, so I have the 100% line here, and this curve is telling me, okay, I have a lot of customers that are pushing my profitability up. I have a lot of customers that are break even. So this will be the second part of the whale curve. These customers, typically, they are very important and relevant because sometimes they are the customers of volume. So of course we cannot get rid of them, but we should try always to optimize the profitability of these big customers. And then the most interesting part is we will have some loss giving customers that will push our profitability down to that 100% line. Okay, and typically CEOs and board members and CFOs of these companies, what they want to see is, okay, show me, I have these very profitable customers that I want to keep. Show me why they are profitable, and what can I learn from these profitable customers that I can implement on unprofitable customers. Okay, and then we start having this discussion with the companies of how to improve profitability. What's interesting, of course, this is top level. What's interesting is when we start drilling down this type of information. What I'm showing you here now, it's the next level. One of the outputs of these models, of course, will be a profit and loss statement, and it's a P&L in multiple levels. So I can then do the analysis on per customer, per product, per route, per service, per warehouse. So we can do this multi-dimensional. But what's interesting and what I'm trying to show in this image is I have two customers. They have more or less the same revenue. So Safeway in Boston and ShopRite in Detroit, in terms of revenue, they are 483, 464. But I could see that Safeway, the customer on the left was a lot more profitable than the one in the right. And a lot of companies, they have this, but they don't have the drill down capability. So when we implement TDABC, we can do that very easily, okay? Because then we will have the activities. We can see what's the cost, the allocated cost, activity by activity. We can compare that cost on the company average. We can compare the costs across customers. So if they are customers within the same industry, I can try to understand why one is more or less complex and more or less costly to operate. And in this case was interesting because we could see the customer on the right. They had 4 special instructions, so probably some special late orders that came in. We could also see on average per order, the customer on the right had a lot more products, 45 products per order on average, and the one on the left 27, so more complexity and in handling order by order. Same number of deliveries, 4. But then the customer on the right had 3 returns and the customer on the left 1 return. Okay, so the interesting thing about here is we'll have all this information that now we can quickly isolate the customer and drill down and understand period after period what's happening with the specific customer P&L. The other interesting outputs of TDABC, it's this capability on drilling down even in multi-dimensions. So what I mean is I can quickly build a top 15 net profitability by customer. That this is my top 15, and I can see my bottom 15. What I'm doing here with these arrows is, okay, now show me one target Houston, which was one of the worst. Show me all the products profitability. And what's interesting is, of course, they will have products that are also they are loss giving and others are profitable, right? So they have a combination of products. And this is what's interesting because we cannot commit the error of, because one customer shows us not profitable, we cannot, even Professor Kaplan has an article about that, we cannot fire a customer easily, right? So we need to understand the causes and then try to optimize that customer. And by doing this multidimensional profitability, we can understand that in more detail. And we can keep drilling down. We can build the P&L here. And what's interesting in TDABC, we can then do simulations on using the time equations. Okay, so we can bring in the equation and we can do a simulation. So imagine there's a situation where a specific customer had a product where the price was a bit lower than the others. If I can bring the price up, what's the impact? And what's the impact on that product, on that customer, and in my overall company profitability. So that's the interesting thing about using TDABC. The other detail was that I think is interesting for the topic of this webinar, of course, is the cost to serve. Because we will be doing these process maps for all the activities, we can quickly do a benchmark on the cost to serve. So in this case, if I have, let's say, 4 warehouses and I want to compare a specific activity, delivery or picking, I can quickly see where do I have highest costs. And if I want to do those lean Six Sigma projects, of course, most likely I will start with the ones with higher costs. So I will try to optimize the ones with a bigger impact. And this is again the drill down to the process map, to the time equation, where we can do a simulation on if I reduce the cost of picking from 2 minutes per product to 1 minute per product, what's the impact on my overall profitability? Last but not least, the capacity report as an example, as an overall example. I will give you more more examples in the case studies, but in this situation, I'm comparing the capacity utilization across 4 warehouses: north, south, east, and west. So I can see my warehouse in the north has higher capacity utilization, and the west lowest capacity utilization. But also then I can drill down into a specific activity. So here I'm comparing the shipping. Here I'm comparing the overall capacity of the warehouses. And then in the right, I'm comparing the overall capacity utilization of a specific activity being shipping. Okay. And then, of course, in this case, we cannot probably reallocate resources, but we could reallocate cargo. Okay. So that's typically some of the things that came out of these models is sometimes I receive most of my cargo in a specific warehouse, but then I could then reallocate some of that cargo to be received on a different warehouse and think a bit different. Instead of paying extra hours or have to hire more people to do the same activity. Some of the companies that have implemented TDABC, of course, if we focus on the ones in logistics and distribution, we will see all the big names here, FedEx and Univar, you know, the big TNT in US, you have all the big ones. But I'll focus now in a specific case study, a model and the project I've developed in New Zealand since 2012. It's been a very successful project. They keep improving their profitability. Snell Packaging and Safety, it's a distribution of packaging and safety products. This is the type of products. Here below, you can see some of the examples. What was interesting about this company is they have 150 employees, so it's a small, medium enterprise. They have 4 locations: Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch, and Hamilton. Annual sales of 60 million. But what was interesting for them was they have a high complexity of products, a lot of suppliers, 150 suppliers, and more than 5,000 reoccurring customers. The challenge, the business challenge for them was they were measuring profitability on a gross margin. Okay, so basically they were buying a box by €1, and then they were putting 20% margin, and their sales, their entire business was measured on this 20% average profitability. When they tried to do the cost allocations, they were questionable. So people sometimes they were just using volume or they were using the sales, and of course that was just destroying any quality in the result. So that, of course, the bigger the customer, the more cost was paying, but that was not representing the complexity of the business, and they didn't add any process maps. When we got in with this TDABC concept, of course, we developed the process maps. We start looking into the data feeds. We created the profitability reports, multidimensional, and this drill down capability to see customer, product, and the SKU. And we managed to do the capacity reports and do active simulations. I'll show you next quickly what was the data architecture and how the model was developed, so you can get a feeling of, I know we are talking about a theory, a methodology. Show me what do I need to do in my company to do this type of models. And in this case, of course, as I said, we are very, we require data. Of course, we go into their ERP, which was Microsoft Dynamics. They are the WMS, a warehouse management system. They are the CRM. So this is the foundation of data. We start doing some ETL, some cleaning. but especially because if you have so many systems, sometimes your customer ID in your ERP, maybe it's a different customer ID in your WMS, so you need to align this information. And this entire process of collecting data, cleaning data, it takes a bit of time in our projects. So this is critical. Next, what's really important on top of all these systems is to have some kind of cost and profitability analysis software. In this case, we are using cost control, but there's more softwares. There's the one from SAP, from Oracle, from Acorn Systems, Cost Perform. So there's a lot of companies that can do these models. And then in the end, of course, they wanted to see the reports in Power BI integrated with other reports. And this is typically the process of implementing these models. Okay, so data, cleaning the data, preparing the data, TDAVC modeled and developed in a cost and profitability analysis software, and then you can pick and choose the BI solution. Okay, Power BI, Tableau, ClickView, a lot of companies use different options. This is the whale curve that I want to show you. This is an example of whale curve for a specific time period, and this is the idea, right? So they have in this time period they have the profit of around $300,000. So this is the line. But what's interesting is if they could optimize profitability, imagine if they could just bring the loss-giving customers to zero, they will be doubling their profitability. Okay, and this is the image that will target you in terms of profit improvement initiatives. You want to always optimize your profitability until you get at least zero. Of course, if you keep improving profitability to 0 to 5, 10, your overall profitability of the organization keeps growing. And the last slide, because I know time is short, we are 3 minutes. I think I was over excited in my presentation, but this is very important. One of the things I wanted to show you is a practical example of what can you do from this data. So actionable data for profit improvement optimization. One of the dashboards reports we built, it's the customer profitability heat map. In this case, what this dashboard report is showing is the size of the square is sales. So of course, this is my biggest customer in sales. And then green, red show me the profitability, the net profitability after implementing TDAVC. And what was interesting was I could see in my top 20 a loss-giving customer. Okay, and then we start investigating why. In this specific example, this was a customer with more than 52 stores, no minimum order values. So any store could order any product without a minimum order, without a minimum order value. The shipping was free because this in New Zealand, it's the competition in distribution logistics. It's typically that you offer the freight. So freight is free, shipping is free. And then you try to put that cost into your margin. And they had to do 24-hour deliveries. The solution was I was involved in this. Of course, for the customer, for Snell, was very difficult to present an alternative, but for us it was very simple. We decided to suggest centralization of orders, setting a minimum order value, and optimizing delivery routes. Okay, so it's easy sometimes to find a solution that although it will not make you to zero, but will reduce your loss-giving profitability. And the other thing that was interesting in this case was they had a lot of really small customers, people making orders of $10, $20, because that was very common back in the days, but they grow, and of course those customers paying 10, 20, they couldn't even pay for the average cost to serve, which was 65. So one of the things they decided to do, they made it mandatory for really small customers, like individuals. They had to go to make the order online. And online in the platform, they set up some minimum order values. They set up some handling fees and freight fees to compensate if they were below the 65 order value. Okay, so this is a very actionable example of what we can do with information in the output of TDAVC. So a bit to summarize and to finalize my webinar. I know I'm on time. I'm just a bit stressed, but I think I'll make it. There's 3 key areas to invest your time. I think in maximize profitability, increase operational efficiency, and reduce costs. In terms of maximization of profitability, of course, if you understand better your profitability by customer, by product, by service, by logistics route, by distribution center, you can do better decisions. in terms of the increase operational efficiency, I think it's interesting that TDVC has this process map that you can complement with the lean, and you can do a lot of this analysis of the capacity utilization. And in terms of reducing costs, of course, if you know your cost to serve, you can benchmark across warehouses, and you can keep optimizing your cost to serve. And that's it. In terms of, just last line, this is just a quick webinar. I hope we can do a lot more over the next months and years. Just a quick hint, we are going to be in Saudi Arabia in December, 15 and 16 of September in Dammam, and 18 and 19 of September in Riyadh. We are going to do a full and complete 2-day workshops on cost and profitability analysis. It will be hands-on, so there will be some components of theory and some components of hands-on where you can build your own TDABC model and get this feeling of what's required for me to do this in my company. So this is I'll leave you with this information. My contact information is here, and I'm sure Dr. Khalid and Tamir Al Road Training Center will also give you more details in case you need to know more information. And that's it for today.
Thank you, Mr. Miguel, for this informative presentation webinar. Thank you all for attending this event. Hopefully you enjoyed and get some new insights. As I mentioned earlier, I think we cannot accept now questions as the time is limited. But we hope if you have any questions, maybe you can send directly to Mr. Miguel. As you see now, his address, his email address, and also I think you can find him on LinkedIn, or you can contact me directly. I will forward it to Miguel. شكرا للجميع، شكرا لحضوركم، شكرا لاهتمامكم، ونشوفكم إن شاء الله في لقاء آخر من لقاءات كبسولة تدريبية التابعة لمركز تمهير الرواد للتدريب. Thank you. السلام عليكم.
Thank you.